So last week, my family and I weren't here. I don't know if you guys noticed. We weren't here, so we went to my previous church. They were the old church before I came here. They were celebrating 20 years of being a church, of God's faithfulness, of how God has moved through various people, and they invited us along with so many other people who played a part in the church. So we went down, and as we were there, I tell you, one of the good things is going to a church that you've been for, like in my case, about 14 years, and for my wife, about all the 20 years she was there from the beginning. And there are people who don't know us, they don't recognize us. And that is a good sign because it means the church is on mission and is doing what God intended it to do, and new people are coming in and hearing about Jesus. But one day, there was a guy by the name of Rick. So Rick recognized me and he came and he's like, Oz, I want to take a picture with you. I want to take a photo with you. Just me and you taking a photo. But you know, like when somebody comes and say that, you just say, yeah, we'll take a photo, but you're not really going to take a photo. Just say, yeah, I'm going to take a photo. You guys do it too. You know, like somebody you haven't seen in like a year, they're like, oh, we should grab a coffee. We should grab a coffee. You're like, yeah, we should grab a coffee. And then you never grab a coffee. And then in 2 years' time, you see the same person. You'll be like, yeah, let's grab a coffee. It's like, yeah, let's grab a coffee. But you never grab the coffee. So this time I thought it was kind of one of these. I was like, yeah, let's take a picture. And then I kind of forgot about it. And then like an hour or two later, he comes. He's like, Oz, let's take that photo. I'm like, yeah, let's take a photo. And then 20 minutes later, he comes up with the cameraman. He's like, let's take a photo. I'm like, dude, man, what's going on? Like, people don't actually take photos when they say, let's take a photo. But he wanted to take a photo. So then I asked him, I was like, hey, what's going on? Why do you want to take a photo with me? And then he says, I am going back to America this week. So you see, Rick is a missionary, and he came about 15 years ago to Ireland. So it's like, I want to show them a photo of you, Oz. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, let's show it. Okay, get my good side. Get my good side. Oh. And I was like, what are you gonna what are you gonna tell him about me? And Rick says, I'm gonna tell him you're a pastor. I'm like, oh yeah, come on, take many pictures, take many pictures. But then he goes, I'm also gonna tell him that 15 years ago, this man over here came to church because of a cute girl. He didn't come to church to praise Jesus. He came to church for a girl. By the way, that girl is my wife here. however, however, look what God has done in 15 years. He came to church not looking for Christ, but he found Christ. And one thing that I am grateful for Rick is he didn't see me for what I was. He saw me for what I could be. So Rick actually would spend time with me, invite me to his house, take me out for dinner, and open up the Bible with me and invest and pour into me because, again, he didn't see me for what I was or for what I had done. That guy who had come to get the girl, but he saw me as somebody who could be so much more. I know some of you are here today, and right now you're having flashbacks of some things that you've done that you're not really proud of, or some things that you are doing now and you feel stuck. Maybe some sort of addiction that's got a grip on you, and you've got all that shame, all that guilt of the things that you do in secret, of those things that you do at night. And you feel that you could be never be more than that. But I'm here to tell you that Jesus we were singing about, the Jesus of the Bible, does not see you for what you are now or for what you have done, but he sees you for what you can be when you're transformed by the gospel of Jesus Christ. So I'm gonna highlight this by going to one of my favorite narrative stories in the Bible. It is Luke chapter 19. So if you guys want to go to Luke chapter 19, so I'm going to read for you from Luke chapter 19 and do some commentary. So Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. A man was there by the name of Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was wealthy. He wanted to see who Jesus was, but because he was short, he could not see over the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree to see him, since Jesus was coming that way. When Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and said, Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today. So he came down at once and welcomed him gladly. All the people saw this and began to mutter, He has gone to be the guest of a sinner. But Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, 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 here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor. And if I had cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount. Jesus said to him, Today salvation has come to your house, because this man too is the son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. That is my favorite story in the Bible. And you know why. Don't make me say it. You know why. I identify with the struggles of Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus is trying to see Jesus. But the normies, the normies, they're so inconsiderate. They're preventing him from seeing Jesus. There's a reason I don't go to concerts where you've got to be standing up. Because I can't see. Because the normies are so inconsiderate. They don't know that some people are short. And some normies can be mean. So I identify with Zacchaeus. I mean, all his life he would have heard all them jokes. I heard them too. Jokes like, you're so short that when it rains, you're the last to know. You're so short that when you shower, the water evaporates before it reaches you. I've heard them. If you ask a normal person their height, they'll say something like, I'm 6 foot something. But if you ask a short person, they'll go, I'm 5 foot, 0.2345. Because you see, every decimal counts when you're short. So I identify with Zacchaeus. I love him. I know the struggle. I've been there. So Zacchaeus wants to see Jesus, though. Usually something probably has happened in his life that is making him want to see Jesus. So maybe he's going through some crisis or even some success. Because sometimes when you have success, when you reach the top and you've got that empty feeling, I've got that promotion, but I'm still empty. What is going on? Or maybe when tragedy strikes, something is wrong with your health. You lose a loved one. You get fired. You have a bad breakup. And at that point, we start to ask spiritual questions. So something is going on in Zacchaeus' life. And he's heard, no doubt, about this man Jesus. So he starts to search. Because he's hearing that some people in his profession, some people like Matthew, the tax collector, have started to follow Jesus. So now he's like, I want to know more about Jesus. So he starts to search. Maybe this is where you are. I don't know exactly what is going on in your life, but especially if it's pain, lean into that. C.S. Lewis says something that God whispers to us in our pleasures, but he shouts at us in our pain. Pain is God's megaphone to you to start searching for Jesus. So if this is where you are right now, as a church, we would like to help you to start searching. If you want, we've got some Bibles out there that you can take free of charge. It's on us. You can take and investigate this New Testament about Jesus. Or if you want, on Wednesdays at 6:30, we have a course that we call the Alpha Course, where you can come and search and ask questions about Jesus. But actually, I talked about, some water. I talked about how Zacchaeus is short, but that's not all that Zacchaeus was. If you go to Luke chapter 19, verse 2, thank you. So Luke chapter 19, verse 2, this is what you read. A man was there by the name of Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and he was wealthy. Let me tell you something. There's a lot of parents here who are proud about their children, especially when they grow up and they start getting jobs. We can't wait to tell our friends, oh, my baby's an engineer. Oh, my baby is a doctor. Let me tell you something. Zacchaeus' parents were not going around telling other people, oh, my baby's a tax collector. No, you don't say that. At parties, people will be asking, oh, so what's happening with Johnny? I'm like, no, he's got a job, but he's moved to a different city. But what's Johnny doing? He's doing a little bit of this and that. What exactly is Johnny doing? Hey, you're asking too many questions. Nobody wants to tell people that their child is a tax collector. Let me tell you, tax collectors in that society and probably in our society too were despised. There were probably 3 reasons why tax collectors were despised. I'll tell you. The first one is they collected taxes, tolls and taxes. I tell you, when I'm driving on the motorway, you get to that to the toll gate, and there's that machine, and it won't let you through. It won't lift the barriers unless you swipe your card, and it takes €2.20. I'm telling you, I stare at that machine, saying, "Are you serious? You want me to pay to use the motorway?" It doesn't respond, and then I just pay the €2. So we don't like tax collectors because they are collecting. And then the second one is he was collecting for the enemy. He's collecting for the colonizers. Can you imagine a tax collector in Ireland when it was occupied by the British? He was collecting taxes for the British. Yes, you could do it, but you don't walk around telling people you're not going to be popular. So this was Zacchaeus. He is collecting taxes and is giving them to Rome. So he was despised. And then the third one, which is the biggest one now, tax collectors were considered crooks. You see, the way the system worked is the taxpayers would prepay the taxes and the tolls to Rome, and then after they have prepaid, they would then go collect from the people. So nobody would mind if they sort of like collected what they had paid and recouped a little bit of a profit. That's okay. A little bit of a profit is good. But they didn't just get a little bit of a profit. They just gouged the people to the point that it was extortionate. You can just think of a landlord. You don't mind if your landlord kind of raises the rent, right? But when they raise the rent by like 25%, you're like, come on, what is going on? So this is Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus was despised. But also look what happens when he meets Jesus. So in verses 4 and 5. And by the way, Zacchaeus climbs a tree. That's how much he wanted to see Jesus. I don't know about you, but if you ever see a grown man climbing a tree, something is not right. Kids, you're in here. If you see your parents climbing trees, you'll probably go, something is not right. Because it's not dignified for a grown man to be climbing trees. But anyway, in verse 4 and 5. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore tree to see him. Since Jesus was coming that way, when Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house. So he came down at once, and Zacchaeus welcomed Jesus gladly. Let me tell you, Jesus welcomes Zacchaeus. He doesn't see him for what he is. He's a tax collector, but he sees him for what he could be, which is a person who's transformed by the message of Jesus Christ. Can you think about it? Like Zacchaeus is picked out of a crowd by Jesus. That's gotta be special. It reminds me of one of my favorite comedians, Kevin Hart. He was invited to the White House, and when he was in the White House, they were like, this room was full of celebrities. And then Obama stepped out and he was doing his Obama walk. And then he was just about to address the crowd. He looks at Kevin Hart and he goes, what's up, Kev? And then continued. And man, Kevin Hart is like, wow, the president called me. He felt so special. Oh, like me, I got the opposite of that. I told you about the girl that I was uh, pursuing, right? The girl that I was pursuing. I'm going to tell it. I'm going to tell it. The first time I saw this girl at a different church, I was smitten like a kitten. She was killing me softly, and I was just like googly eyes. I'm like, man, that girl was fine. And she was walking into church at this point. And I'm supposed to be praying, but I'm peeking. I'm like, woo, 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 woo. However, I must have stared too much. Because then she turned and looked my way. I'm like, oh man, I am in trouble. And then she starts walking toward me. And then she came into the row of seats where I was. And she started to greet people. She greeted the first person, and the second person, and the third person. And she got to me. She skipped me. And went to greet the next person, and the next person, the next person. And she left and went. And I am there heartbroken. She didn't see me. You know, she saw me for what I was. So actually, she didn't even see me. Because when I brought up the subject years later, she doesn't even remember. So it never happened. I never saw you. Because she couldn't even recognize me. I was like a dot on the radar. But she failed to see me. But she didn't know what I could be. Your husband. But anyway, so what I'm trying to say is Jesus doesn't see you for who you are, but for what you can be. And when Zacchaeus grasped this, he gets down and he's overjoyed and he rejoices and he's happy. But not everybody is happy. Look at what happens in verse 7. All the people saw him and began to mutter, he has gone to be the guest of a sinner. Doesn't Jesus know that this person is a sinner? Of course, Jesus knows. But Jesus knows that once Zacchaeus is transformed by Jesus, he will be something different. Jesus looks at Zacchaeus for what he could be. So now, because of that, this is now what you read in verses 8 and 9. So Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord. So this incident, it's hard to say whether this happened at the tree or if they had walked a little bit or they were now at Zacchaeus' house. It's kind of hard to tell, but it doesn't matter as much. But Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, 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 here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor. And if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount. Jesus said to him, today salvation has come to this house, because this man too is the son of Abraham. That's a curious expression. He's the son of Abraham. Just think about Abraham. What is Abraham popular for? He's the father of Israel, right? But why did he become the father of Israel? Genesis 15 verse 6 tells us. Genesis 15 verse 6. Abraham believed God and he credited it to him as righteousness. You see, Abraham had faith in God, and then God credited it to him as righteousness. So to be a son of Abraham is to be a person of faith. It is to be a person who has faith in Jesus. So Zacchaeus too is a son of Abraham. He has faith. We are saved by faith alone. We are baptized because we are signifying that we have accepted that we are saved by faith alone. It is only what Jesus has done that saves us. Nothing else. But here's the things, as the reformers used to say. Yes, we are saved by faith alone. But the faith that saves never comes alone. It is always accompanied by deeds. And do you see what Zacchaeus did in verse 8? He gave half. Ooh, somebody say, ooh, half of his money. You thought 10% was hard? He's giving half, and even more than half. Because after that, he says, if I have cheated anybody, I will pay back 4 times what I've cheated them. Restitution. This is a life that has been transformed by Jesus. You see, when you've got faith in Jesus, your life will never be the same. It will be transformed, even transformed to the point where you are so generous, to the point that you're so welcoming. Remember what I said? Jesus doesn't see you for what you are, but for what you can become, because after you have faith, you start to change and you become more and more like Christ. And this is what happens to Zacchaeus. And if you think about the apostle James, in James chapter 2, verse 14, he tells us this. What good is it, my brothers and sisters, if someone claims to have faith but has no deeds? Can such faith save him? So you see, we are saved by faith. Right on the left here, faith alone. But the faith that saves is never alone. It comes with deeds. The deeds come after. It's the logical sequence. Like if you've got somebody whose deeds don't fit the faith, you go, James is going, did you really believe in the first place? But if you really, really believed in the first place, it will be seen in your life getting transformed. And then the other thing is, why does Jesus care so much about people like Zacchaeus? The Zacchaeuses of this world. People like me. Luke chapter 19, verse 10 tells us the answer. And I think the children, this is the verse that you're to be coloring in. For the Son of Man, that's a title for Jesus from the Old Testament. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. You need to understand that Jesus is a God of second chances. We live in a culture that is so quick to want to cancel people. You do something wrong, you say a bad word on the internet, people are ready to cancel you, to take away your livelihood. No second chances for you. But that is not Jesus. Jesus is a person for second chances. And this is ultimately shown in Luke chapter 19, verse 1. Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. So when Jesus meets Zacchaeus, Jesus was passing through. So if you're passing through, it means you're on your way to somewhere. So where was Jesus going? Jesus was going to Jerusalem. And what was to happen in Jerusalem? We read about this in Luke chapter 18, verse 31. So Jesus took the 12 aside and told them, we are going up to Jerusalem, and everything that was written by the prophets about the Son of Man will be fulfilled. He will be delivered over to the Gentiles. They will mock him, they will insult him, they will spit on him, they will flog him and kill him, and on the third day he will rise again. And it says Jesus is on his way to die for people like you and me, to die for people like Zacchaeus, to die so that people can move from what they are to what they can be. And if you grasp that, if you internalize that verse that the Son of Man came to seek and save that which was lost, if you let that be your guiding compass, that will keep you away from being a person who grumbles and complains when people are found. When you understand that this was the mission of Jesus. So instead of grumbling, today we're going to be celebrating. We're going to be celebrating with Claudia. We're going to be celebrating with praise as they mark out publicly that they have decided to follow Jesus. That Jesus has been a big part of their lives, that Jesus is the number one in their lives. We're going to celebrate as they go into the waters of baptism and come out. We're going to rejoice. Because you see, Jesus didn't see them for what they were, but for what they could be, which is transformed Christians. You see, church history and the Bible is littered with people who've been transformed by Jesus. Who can forget Saul of Tarsus? The man persecuted the church. He wanted to destroy the church. The man was an accomplice to murder. He was there when Stephen was being stoned. But yet when he got touched by Jesus, Jesus who saw him not for what he was, but for what he could be, he became a sold out person for Jesus. Half of the books we have in the New Testament are from Paul, who you know, right, is Saul. Who can forget about John Newton? John Newton was a slave driver. So he profited from people being sold like cattle. But when he encountered Jesus, who saw him not for what he was, a slave trader, but he saw him for what he could be. Now we've got that amazing hymn, Amazing Grace, because he understood that Jesus can save you. So today, I don't know where you are. You think you've done too much wrong in your life. You got shame, you got guilt. But I'm here to tell you there is a person, Jesus, who understands your weaknesses. There is a person who's willing to transform you because he sees you, not for what you are, but for what you can be.